Okay. Uh, Hi guys, welcome to TapChief Live with Raj from RentoMojo.
Hi.
Raj comes to Hey Raj, what's up? And we'll be going live now. And people, if you have any questions, just throw them up on the comments. From what I believe, we're going live on Facebook and LinkedIn at the same time. So feel free to just jump in with the questions in the comments, and we'll be addressing a few of them at the end of the session. And through this particular session, we're going to be discussing a couple of themes with Raj. And those themes largely revolve around these three categories. The first theme we're going to be talking about is how do you kind of provide world class customer experience while at the same time managing growth at an early stage startup. It is a trade off. It is a trade off that a lot of product managers, CEOs, early stage teams struggle with. And having seen that 0 to 1 journey and 1 to N journey, Raj has managed and worked with teams who have balanced both of these in a fair enough manner. And that's what we're going to be talking about majorly. At the same time, we're going to talk about what is up with internal tools when it comes to product managers. Do we love them? Do we hate them? Are they important? Are they not important? How do they look on a portfolio? And more importantly, the kind of leverage they create for product managers, for teams to provide a world class customer experience while managing growth as well. And after that, we're going to be addressing a few hot favorites that come to product managers all the time about how to motivate engineers, how do you kind of prove your worth as a product manager when you join a new team, and a variety of those common staple questions that people have. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, if you have questions that lie outside of this purview, feel free to drop them in the comments, and Raj will be picking them up towards the end. So that's largely about the session. Raj, are we ready to begin?
Yeah, sure. Please, please.
Absolutely. So, Raj, let's kind of begin with a small introduction and let's talk about this. So, Raj comes to us from Manipal originally, and he's worked at a variety of different places, a variety of different companies before he finally ended up at product management. Is that correct, Raj?
Yes, absolutely. I think before we begin with the whole basic
Yeah.
introduction, just want to point out that Neil was super kind to relay some of the questions that are possibly going to be in this event. However, I'll
Yeah.
be very honest, the last 2 hours I've been trying to think of something funny to say, and unfortunately I failed at that. So we'll just have to wing this. I think we'll start with my background. Just like any middle class Bengali family, boy or girl, we're ideally given a choice between engineering and medical. Since I was quite exceptional at biology, I became a mechanical engineer. So that did not go as planned. But yeah, I mean, I think post my mechanical engineering, I forayed into the world of the industry of mechanical engineering. Basically, my journey began with Hero Motorcorp in Gurgaon, and I was a project manager over there. We kind of use the word manager everywhere. I believe there was nobody reporting to me at that point of time. I was still a graduate engineer, fresh. So, but the manager title was just thrown on us. I think post Hero, I did my bachelor's in computer science, which is not from a university, but from the various startups that I worked for. And now I have completely transitioned from a mechanical engineer ideally to a very low key computer science guy. I think most of my engineers will disagree, but I would like to think so. And yeah,
All
and
right.
yeah, please, yeah.
So,
And as the things go on, I just ended up at RentoMojo right now.
So actually, by the way, that's a very humble introduction by Raj. If you kind of just check him out on LinkedIn or look at his profile, he's worked at some really amazing companies, and starting with Woopler, which largely, if I'm not wrong, that's more in the influencer marketing space, right, where it helps influencers monetize their own catalogs and whatnot, kind of
Uh,
like a Patreon of sorts.
yeah, I think Woopler, when we started, we were into the whole influencer marketing game, and then slowly we pivoted into the whole reselling market as a whole.
Yeah, yeah, like a
And
me show before me show, right? Essentially.
absolutely, absolutely. So Misho was our direct competitor at that point of time, and so we were the first two players ideally into this whole reselling market, and those was really interesting and fantastic times. So yeah,
All right, great. By the way, I think your team's already here, Raj. I can see a few joy emojis here. So I think now's a good time to begin. So
yeah.
let's kind of like jump right into it, right? And
Hmm.
so, given the current scenario and generally otherwise, people largely deal with two kinds of growth, or
Hmm.
like let's
Hmm.
call one like user growth or acquisition, where you're getting
Hmm.
new users and connecting them to the value proposition of whatever you're working on. And the second
Hmm.
kind of growth is just retaining your existing users, which could be of
Right.
the kind of converting new users to active users or activating them, taking churned users and making them into retained users, which we call as
Right.
resurrection. or converting all of these current users into so-called power users if power users exists for a product like
Mm-hmm.
yours. Now, given the
Mm-hmm.
current situation, you don't see a lot of people, the choices they make, the kind of resources they use, the kind of money they use, there's a certain paucity of that in and around here with the whole situation around. So it's
Mm-hmm.
incredibly more important to kind of start retaining your users better. It always has been, but now more than ever. One of the major things, drivers as such, or a proxy for retention is how good of a user experience or customer experience you give to your user base, right? And that's where
Mm-hmm.
this whole concept of how do we balance retention or customer experience, more importantly, and giving the best world class experience possible, as you like to put it, while
Mm-hmm.
balancing growth, how does that go for you? So, what's very interesting is that the audience should understand that Raj largely moved from being a primarily growth PM, do correct me if I'm wrong about this,
Yes,
to
of
a
course.
person who started handling end-to-end customer experience from operation teams to the end user experience, right? So he's someone who's seen that journey end to end, and probably one of the few people in this who's made that transition very seamlessly.
Mm-hmm.
Because from what I understand, people are either hired for one of the two purposes, but neither not transitioning from one to the other. There are distinct personas of PMs. There are different kinds of journeys required for both. So could you tell us a bit about that? Like, how do you strike that balance? How has that journey been? Let's start with the journey.
Yeah, cool. So I think, as you clearly mentioned, it's a very simple proposition. If you want to, dumb down the jargons, you get new people on board to your business, and you keep
Correct.
them, you make them stay. That's it.
Hmm.
That's all about your customer base. Now, I have been working in growth. One of the major reasons why I want to start with a simple story, or rather a life experience. When we work, or when we generally work in growth roles, and we try to come up with new initiatives, we run A/B tests. We try to think of what is the best, what will result in maximum conversions, etc., etc. Uh, we often realize that the initial test is fantastic. Maybe it gave fantastic results, but we've often been left wondering as to why, in the long run, the numbers suddenly what they were used to be in month one, they don't translate with the same initiative. They don't translate towards month 4 or month 5.
Hmm.
And that is when it kind of occurred to us, at least to the people we have been working with, that the real juice is in the customers you already have. And if you can't keep them, if you can't make them stick with you, you will never be able to sustain your business. It's as simple as that. I
Absolutely.
think
You'll be
that is
losing more than you're gaining at that moment. It's negative.
absolutely. And that is the kind of story which made my transition from growth to working with the customer experience and operations team here. And finally, right now, yes, I have very recently taken over the entire CX and Ops admin aspect of RentoMojo here. And the entire transition was primarily because of this. The curiosity to find out as to why most of our growth initiatives in the long run was not working out as we had planned when we conceptualized and delivered them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, in a nutshell, that is ideally how growth and customer experience will go hand in hand. As we delve deeper into topics, we'll kind of focus on more important things. How do we now deliver, given the current startup environment? There'll always be a budget constraint, and you can't afford to get third-party expensive tools, which will probably give you better solutions in the short run, but in the long run, not necessarily so. So as we go further into the conversation, maybe we will start talking about that.
Absolutely. That's a great primer. And to anyone listening in right now, it's extremely important to understand that how we are defining both of these terms, because it's very important to unpack a lot of these code names. Like I think Raj rightly put it, there is a lot of jargon out there. I know people who club retention under growth. I know people who club retention separately than growth, right?
Mhm.
And so that's where we're going. So, like you mentioned, we'll be delving deeper into measurement. We'll be delving deeper into decision framework. We'll be going much deeper into this. So, stay tuned. Again, if you have questions, keep posting them in the comments. We'll be taking them up towards the end, which will be 30 to 45 minutes from now. So,
Mhm.
let's begin with this. That growth, is a fairly easily definable. There are very strong bounds to what people define as growth. Let's
Mhm.
take RentoMojo for example. For new user acquisition, it could simply be a funnel tracking from number of new leads or signups to
Mhm.
placing their first order, right, as an activated user, right,
Mhm.
in that space. Whereas
Mhm.
when you talk of customer experience and thereby a proxy of satisfaction, people have only used something very top level like NPS till now.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
apart from making a very pretty presentation at the end of it saying that we have NPS of 80 and we have NPS of 90 and we lie in this green bar and we are so promoters and so many detractors and so many neutral. NPS doesn't really offer any insight unless you dissect it or go deeper, right? And I imagine that
Mhm.
that is something you've actively done, where you have unpacked NPS to what it actually means. Because data is just data, but being data driven means deriving insight from this data. So how do you go about doing it? How do you measure customer experience? Is NPS enough? What should early stage teams actually be looking at, right?
Right. I think to answer this question, I'll kind of summarize it. I'll start off with what we do at RentoMojo. In
That would be great.
RentoMojo, yeah, and I think one very important point that I want to make here is
Hmm.
NPS or any KPI that you're measuring is not just the product team's KPI. It is the company's KPI. It is everybody's KPI. It is the functional leader's primary KPI, and it translates down to you, right? So one of the things that we follow at RentoMojo is that we have a shared KPI sheet for each of the business verticals that we ideally work for, right? And that kind of helps us to understand key both the functional leaders as well as the product managers, especially the engineering managers as well. Everybody kind of has a very clear understanding of what we ideally want to do and how we are supposed to do it, and how do we measure the impact of everything, right? You are actually absolutely spot on. NPS is definitely not the sole or a very strong measurement of how your business is faring at a certain point of time in space and time. However, it is very important because to your investors, to anybody outside, kind of gives you a very instant image of currently where you're lying at. Now, unfortunately, NPS is something that ideally mostly internal people and people who are interested in your business, want to be a part of your business, ideally want to look at. Mostly customers will look at reviews on Facebook, on Google, on Play Store, on App Store, right? And these are all basic different types of sort of NPS only. I mean, ultimately, a review, a weighted review on Google is nothing but how your app is performing or how your app is faring. It is not just how the UI UX, it's also how the entire end business is also faring, right? Most of the
Absolutely.
reviews, yeah, most of the reviews that in fact you will see on App Store, on Play Store, these are primarily things which are honing down on some service that you had promised initially to your customer, which you couldn't solve in the best way that ideally the customers would have wanted it to be. And thus, it is very important for us to, like, feedback is the primary way to track customer experience across the board, right?
Mhm.
From the feedback, when you start there, you can then bring this entire feedback, break it down to certain steps in your customer's journey. The customer's journey always doesn't, especially for a business like us, it doesn't end at a checkout. There is a full there's a rental is we have a subscription based platform where we provide a plethora of services which are not value added, which come with the price you're paying at the beginning of your journey. And for us to for you as a customer, it is your birthright to be utilizing those services, and it is our duty to ensure those services are as streamlined and as smooth for you as possible. And for those things, we ideally drill down and break it down into multiple sub KPIs, and which are things we track on a day-to-day basis, and we see the movement there to gauge as to how our initiatives are ideally doing, right? Now, once I've actually said that, to be honest, customer experience is fairly simple because there is no rocket science in this. I think the best customer service that any company can provide is give your products for free. Obviously, you're not going to do that because that is the,
True, true,
yeah,
true.
you, right. I mean, you will get the highest NPS possible on known to mankind, right? So how do you balance how much you make your customers, you know, pay for your business, or rather pay for the service that you're providing, and at the same time see a certain amount of value that is offsetted by the amount of money that they're paying for, right? And
Correct.
that is ideally the job of a customer experience team. We already have the left hand side is fixed. Okay, this is how much
Yeah.
we are expecting our customers to pay for the service. So it is our job to ensure that for that value, the maximum yield that you can give to a customer is translated
How
to
do
them.
we provide disproportionate value, right? In like, how do
Absolutely.
we derive like whatever this subscription value, this amounts coming through? How do we provide them the most stellar experience which fits into our business goal? Because ultimately,
Absolutely.
not all companies can be altruistic within this, infinitely scalable, so nothing will be there. So
Yeah.
one very important aspect that I think Raj covered, and I don't know how many of you caught on to that, where he mentioned that our product doesn't end at the checkout or the UI UX of 10 screens. Because if you look
Mhm.
at RentoMojo, it's a hybrid experience, right? Product doesn't end at someone click on checkout that, yeah, I need this table, or I am renting out the scooter or something like that. It ends at when that person has used the scooter or sat on that table and actually worked on it and then used it for a period of 6 months. When they have to cancel the subscription, when they have to renew it, the ease of doing all of this is the experience, right? So this is very fascinating. This is not something like an engineer or someone controls. It is something that some ops guy in a warehouse their customer success representative,
Absolutely.
their event partner, the person who's manufacturing that furniture and has serviced that scooter which is going out for rent. All of them are part of the experience, right? So how do you manage it? There's just so many moving parts, and it's just crazy. It's not a software product, right? Purely, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have primarily never, to be honest, worked with anything which is a non-operational,
Mm-hmm.
non-operational based heavy business. I think one of the most important things, one of the reasons why I really wanted to work in this vertical of the business itself, is that if you have to understand a product manager, ideally the relationship with a customer is very important, and a product manager must actually understand who their customer is. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this is something I had a very big misconception in the beginning, way when we started, when I just joined the customer experience projects, that my customer was the end customer. Until some of the best people in the company, some of the functional heads and all these people, they reminded me that my customer is somebody who's going to be using my tools, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
customer doesn't necessarily have to be the end consumer. It can also be somebody internally working, like your operations team, your last mile team, your warehousing team, your assembly team, including your category team when they're onboarding new products onto your platform, how they're going to go about it. So the number of hats that you have to wear in order to solve everyone's problems, that is a very interesting and like a fantastic opportunity for any product managers ideally trying to look into the fold, especially if they're planning to work in the ops and the customer experience and support sectors ideally. It is the skills you learn here and the variety of people you have to negotiate with. This thing ideally you will not, I won't say you will not, my humble opinion, I think you get less of this opportunity when you work for, say, in the growth department. Because in the growth department, the logic is very simple. You have an end consumer and you have to somehow get them to stay for longer and get more people to come in. So you primarily measure purely in terms of conversion stuff. You have one person to cater to. But in customer experience, you have to look after or look to cater to a lot of people, a lot of different kinds of people.
That's
So yeah,
interesting, right? So how so while user empathy and understanding the user is a core thing, what I think Raj actually focused on, and this brings us very interestingly to the next segment of this particular webinar, is the fact that where he called every person who uses his product a user. He didn't just say that the person who's renting a scooter or using RentoMojo as a consumer and paying them money. He talked about his own fulfillment team members as one of the users. Correct, Raj? You also consider
yes,
them your
absolutely.
users, right? Or he's
Absolutely.
considering his own data team if they use one of your products to derive something
Absolutely.
out as a user, and things like that. And that kind of horizontal looking at users just kind of changes a lot of things in the eyes of product managers, right? And this is something that I'm going to push to you, Raj, because this is something I have seen while hiring for product or engineering folks, that there's a certain amount of not animosity, there's a certain amount of aversion to working in roles or working in product teams which only cater to admin tools, or so they've been called, or internal tools, right? It's somehow
Hmm.
viewed as less than say building for consumer facing. Like, let's just take an example. Today, given the opportunity to work on the feed of a popular social app versus given the opportunity to work on the admin panel for moderation of a social app, would be viewed as two very different opportunities in the job market right now. So,
Hmm.
what's your view on that, right? Like, should people be working on internal tools? How can they view that as high leverage opportunities? Does anything change as such while working on internal tools versus consumer facing tools?
I think this is an interesting question. I think the primary and the easiest answer to this is primarily boils down to what you value. As a product manager,
Mhm.
ideally, it will boil down to obviously what you find more interesting. Now, this question is the answer to this can be is actually dependent upon the kind of industry you're working for. You can say the point that you made would be slightly more relevant, at least in my opinion, if we were say working for a SaaS based company. In a SaaS
Yeah.
based company, you will ideally be more focused to make the analytics platform of say something like a Mo Engage. You would be
Mhm.
wanting to make work on fantastic visualizations so that the end customer, the marketing team who's going to be working on Mo Engage and sending out their all the customer communications via Mo Engage should have the best experience possible. Whereas internally, somebody say working on the backend trucks, the machine learning logics, working in the
Mhm.
background to cater to this front end information might not seem as appealing. Although I think machine learning right now is the in thing, even though I
Mhm.
personally don't understand anything of it at all. Um,
I
Yeah,
don't
that's
think
what we
most
have a.
people who even use that word do understand it, by the way. Just like, yeah, but go for it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll speak for my team. I think RentoMojo is a fabulous team that way. I think both the engineering and the data science teams are pretty stellar. And the way they've simplified the entire core proposition to me, I have understood it a little bit, at least now, better than what I used to. But anyway, moving on.
I think Raj is just
Um,
projecting himself against the comment section, okay? Like right now, I can see that happening, but go for it, man.
no, nothing like that. This is an honest fact. Yeah, I think yeah, I mean, working on internal tools, working on as I mentioned in the previous statement as well, I think the biggest pleasure, I think mostly product managers should derive pleasure from the success of their initiatives. Frankly speaking, I think I have derived more pleasure from working in the CX and of projects than working in the growth projects, is because the results are immediate. It is because when you see the person who is working from the warehouse and they give you a call and they're like, wow, this is a fantastic optimization you guys have done. And it has literally made my life so easy. Like I've cut down on 4 hours of work today. And that is direct appreciation you get from the moment of launch. Whereas maybe in terms of the consumer facing projects, you have to ideally either call up a customer who you think has probably adopted the feature very well, or you have to wait for a data team to give you back insights. So I think this is my personal opinion. This is how I value ideally success, and I feel really proud of everybody involved, whoever has conceptualized it, whoever has worked on it, and of course me being the little, so to speak, the glorified dalal in between. That is how I consider product managers in general.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So I think that is one of the major reasons. That is one. So anybody aspiring, trying to figure out what kind of product management roles suit you. If you're the kind of person looking for immediate gratification and immediate rewards, you should definitely work for admin side of things, because see, they're the backbone. They're the backbone of your business, and that is the real control center. I think the amount of information you have available over there and the amount of things you can do are much more than say something on the customer side of things. I think to sum this, I'm speaking about this from a ops heavy company or a product based company point of view, something that has a physical asset attached to it. Maybe this is not true in the case of SaaS, and I don't think I'm in any position to comment on that. However, I think primarily in growth, the biggest drivers will always be pricing and will always be stock. Both of these are controlled ideally by your business and your revenue units. So, at a product manager, the conversion impact that you actually have is smaller, say compared to the price drop that a sale will get. A sale comes 10% discount, suddenly you see more conversion than you would have ever dreamed of from any initiative. So that is one of the major reasons why the way I try to differentiate between the two product verticals. And instant gratification is something you definitely get when you work for CX and admin or any of the internal side of things.
No, absolutely right. Because people do this user discovery calls. They'll want to make target user groups. In this
Yeah,
particular case, before the COVID crisis, it was as simple as walking up to another table and said, "Hey, I made this. Is it working for you or not?" Right?
absolutely.
And at the same time, I believe that this is also one of the most common questions that we have had, and I think it's worth it to jump to this point. A lot of people keep asking that, I'm the first product manager who's joined a company, or I am a new product manager to this company, and I want to prove my worth. I want to build this trust and transparency with the engineering team, with the ops team, with the marketing team, and each company has this kind of pivotal teams, right? Like depending what type of company it is, like you mentioned. So I think one of the fastest ways to do that, like Raj mentioned, is just help them build an internal product, because no one's given them that buy-in before. No one's heard their
Mhm.
problems out, which is what user problems are. And no one's bought them a solution and then bothered asking that, hey guys, is this working for you or not? Right? Everyone's either
Yeah.
looking at some abstraction of data or asking the UX research team to get them user stories and snippets out there so they can do it. This is as simple
Mhm.
as just walking up to them. And like the instant gratification, them, I'm very surprised how many people don't even do that. Just asking your team members that, hey, are you guys using this? Is it working for you or not? So that's pretty interesting. And to any aspiring product manager out there, this is the thing to go for, right? Internal products are your way into the fancier stuff that you actually want to do. Of course, there's nuance to it that depends on what kind of company you're working at. But as far as the larger two buckets that I think Raj put it in, most companies will fall into those two buckets. It's very hard to
Mhm.
find a third off mark thing from there, right?
Mhm.
Now, uh, coming to the next one, right? If you're moving to popular questions, there's another one that's pretty interesting there. So, what are some great ways to motivate engineers without inducing burnout? And how do you
Mhm.
come across more as a co-creator and a collaborator rather than as a boss or a manager, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Right.
that is one of the things. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, See this question. I think there are few engineers watching this. So I mean, I'm going to answer this not just in the way that they will like it, but also in the way I honestly believe it to be so. I don't think it is
Absolutely.
the product manager's job ideally to motivate an engineering team. The engineers working for that team are ideally motivated enough, and that is why they're working with you, right? The
Mm-hmm.
product manager's duty is to inspire confidence in the product manager so that the initiatives, whatever you've envisioned, get executed in the exact same fashion that you've envisioned them to be so, right? I think one of the most important things that product managers ideally should focus on, especially when they're talking to this is a very intelligent bunch of people, this engineering core, right? Who ideally have some great solutions of their own. So one thing that I would humbly request any product manager is to be very open-minded when you're trying to go and talk to and trying to give them a briefing. Don't literally tell them what to do. First, start with what the problem is, and then you give your variant of the solution. And then, of course, you start asking, is there a better way to to give a solution? I think I have experienced this X number of times, and with literally engineers from varied experience levels, right? From top guys to interns, they've in many cases they've given much better solutions than I probably tried to envision. And this is primarily because, at least speaking for myself, I don't come from an engineer, I don't come from a comp science engineering background, right? So it is very important to inspire confidence that way, that you are literally looking to collaborate. That's part one. Now, part two is, then this is something which I personally, in my own opinion, I've seen very less product managers doing this. The engineer is writing from his own intelligence, his experience of very, very fantastic function, a model, maybe building a new microservice altogether, etc. What does that translate to you in terms of real life performance? Ideally, everything that you do in a company, in a product based company, is either to increase revenue or to increase savings, right? So the
Correct.
numbers
Yeah.
translation is something that is very important, that you need to tell, if you guys build this in the exact way we are envisioning this, then ideally this is the reward we are looking at. And of course, we should ideally, it is our duty to follow up with the engineering team to tell them, listen, remember you had built this, because they will tend to forget. And because we don't give them this answer more often than not, they tend to also lose interest in कि मतलब वो बनाया था but उसका point क्या था. So you must always
Exactly.
come back with the answers to what it did for you. And that is truly something which will get in a buy-in from the engineering team. Trust me, the engineering team is the toughest team to get buy-in from, because something which I have all, and I don't know, and there's a simple reason behind it, because it is not necessary that any product manager is a good techie. But I'm telling you from my personal experience working with at least, I think this is my 80th or 90th engineer till now that I'm probably working with across three different companies. Every engineer in their own birthright is a product manager. Their hearts are that way. They have been educated like product managers. Although if
They're
you see their
creators.
CVs,
They're
they're
creators. They're
creators.
problem solvers, essentially.
They're problem solvers. So they are mini product managers in themselves. So if you take it to them with an air of superiority or whatever, I don't know, maybe a lot of people ideally are thinking of that this role demands. Please don't. Please understand what these people and what their value are, because they definitely will have one solution or the other which might be better than something and might be solving your problem faster than you are intending to be, and
Okay.
the answers that you're giving to them. Yeah. So I think that is the best way. I mean, you don't motivate them, you get their buy-in rather.
So I think there's a very beautiful line here, right? Like, so what basically stop treating our engineers as ticket takers, actually treat them like a co-creator. Bring them in at the problem stage, solve the problem with them where you are the person giving the variant. 4 out of 5 times if your variant actually works, that is how you build that trust that they will trust you the next time you come up with something. One
Absolutely.
other interesting point that he brought in is that you don't think of it as motivating them as if it's like kind of like a workload thing or a thing like where
Yeah,
you're managing them, right? They are people who are smart. They already know it. Let's work with them. And at the end of the day, what keeps happening is that it's very easy for the engineering team to become jaded because every deadline
mhm.
seems made up. It just seems like this deadline is something Raj has given, not something that 10,000 users are waiting for, right? So when you
Absolutely.
kind of connect that to either a number or the experience, like you mentioned, right? Like this thing will drastically improve the experience because of XYZ reasons, or it's an experiment. This is what my thesis is. And I think that these are very staple advice. And you're right, most product managers do not do this. Is largely some excuse like I don't have the time or something like that. But they're net losing more time when your engineers end up getting jaded with this and you stop owning their buy-in after a while, essentially, right?
Absolutely.
So So I think that's a great point there. And just to wrap up, like we are at the 30-minute mark, we'll be taking up questions after this. So if anyone has any questions, just feel free to like drop them in the live comments. Uh, Raj, these are very interesting times for companies building or for creators in general. This is a very interesting time for aspiring product managers, existing product managers across scales. So, what would be your one piece of advice or a few things you'd like to tell these people? It can be related to this or anything out there that you'd like to tell them. What are those things?
Interesting. I think there are two things I would ideally like to talk about, which in my heart I personally feel are the two two soft skills or three soft skills that an engineers need or are paramount, and two tech skills or one tech skill rather that I would expect them to if they really want to excel in their work. Right now, let's start off with what the demand of a product manager is. It's very simple. You open any JD which is being sent to you by the fantastic companies out there, you will understand what the requirement is. Data interpretation, analytical skills, market research, translation of business requirement into engineering initiatives into product features. Okay?
Correct.
If you
I
see
think
the
you
full,
wrote 90% of all product managers JD were in
yes,
those three lines.
if you see that entire requirement, your CV ideally needs to be matching that of say APJ Abdul Kalam for you to qualify as a product manager. However, I feel personally there are three things which, in my opinion, makes for a or will rather in future will help you become a good product manager. Right? There is no
Okay.
great. It's just a matter of perspective. But a good product manager, somebody, if you feel कि तुमको if you want shabashi from the various teams you're going to be working with, then these are three important things you ideally have in life, and those are basically three questions. One question is, what all can I build? What all should I build? Right? And how do I build it? That's as simple as that. Now, what all can I build? The soft skill for this is curiosity.
Hmm.
Product managers ideally should come with curiosity. If you don't need to come with a plethora of to tech toolkits and languages. No, just have curiosity. If you don't know it, it's fine. The next time you come to a meeting, know it because you will
Hmm.
have enough time. Curiosity will lead you to the various solutions you have to a single problem. Right now, the next part is what you should build. Right, curiosity will tell you the multiple solutions, but you have to remove solutions. So rigor, rigor is something which ideally every product manager should have after curiosity. You should be rigorous, you should be meticulous, and you should be able to point out pros and cons of each of the solutions. And only then will you be able to remove certain solutions and finally arrive to the very few ones which are going to be ideally worth experimenting with. Right.
Hmm.
And third, and the most important thing in my opinion, is how you should build it. Uh, I think the I think most people will answer this question with diligence. I don't think so. I think diligence is something that is um, very. It's a little matter of perspective. What you actually mean by diligence, ideally. Um, the real answer to this is fear. Now, why I'm saying fear is because think of an accountant. If you're an accountant, you are moving from one company to another company, right? You will take your CV, you will take the funds you manage, you will take the the mathematical statistical models that you worked upon, how you improved efficiency, blah blah blah, right? If you're a marketing team member, you will talk about once again the growth of the company, the scale of the company, internal metrics, how you manage teams, etc. But if you're a product manager, if you're an engineering manager, if you're an engineering developer, if you're a UI UX person, if you go to an interview in another company and they will simply ask you where you worked, they will open their phones, they will take out your app, they will just browse it for like 5 seconds, and they will be
Hmm.
like, "Chalo, aap ja sakte ho." So I think fear is very important to understand that you are the person whose BS will be caught out very quickly if you haven't done
Yeah,
a
and
good job.
the buck stops with you, right? You are the person where
Absolutely.
engineering का होगा, design का होगा, business का होगा. That decision is going to be attributed to you in some way or the other.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
dar is something very important which you should have as a product manager. Because if you don't have dar, because the next person, it could be the person who's interviewing in your next company might be a customer of your present company, and
Yeah.
he or she might be pissed off with you. So there is no hiring happening there. तो आओ
No.
वापस आ जाओ अपनी team से. So that is why saying fear is very important. So I think these are the three soft skills that I would like to work about. And one very quick tech skill I would ideally ask any product manager to please have. Please learn SQL. भले ही कुछ ना सीखो लाइफ में, please learn SQL
We
because
have
no
been
matter,
talking about this.
I am a very firm believer of this because otherwise sometimes what will happen is you will wait and wait. The data teams, their job is not to give you very basic queries written. Their jobs are to give you tremendous KPI sheets, tremendous real-time monitoring. But your job should ideally be able to find out very quick information, basic information about a company at any point of time. So please learn SQL. Please.
Yeah. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. I see a lot of people. Is that something that you keep talking about all the time?
Now, the Arjun has been Arjun was one of my compatriots when we were working. When I had just started working on customer experience, and
Acha.
Arjun was the engineering manager of that. So yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I do talk about a lot. Yeah.
All right. All right. Great. So, okay. All right. That was it. That was us, Raj. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience or cover generally out here? Because I think we'll be taking up questions if there are any after this. And if not, we'll be like kind of ending the live session.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think most of the few touch points I really wanted to make this a very light session. Ideally, there's no jargons, no heavy stuff, no fancy things, just basic advice to anybody starting out.
No, I
I
think we've
think
done a good job of that, to be honest. Like, I think we're well on that point. We do have one question, though, here, which we can pick up. And the question goes like this. I believe this question was asked on our Instagram, and we'll be pushing it to that user outright. So, in a supply heavy business like RentoMojo, how do you think product impacts growth? That's the
right.
question.
Okay. I think how does product impact growth in a customer? So okay, I already mentioned this point earlier. I
Yeah.
think one of the most important things in an ops heavy or in a product and a physical asset involved
But more in
business.
terms of a capital intensive business, right? Where the initial capital investment is high in whatever resources there are, right?
Yes, I think of course product plays a tremendous role because when you are working at scale, even a conversion shifting of
Exactly.
a 5 or 10 basis point means involves a huge amount of difference, right?
Yeah.
Additionally, growth teams ideally are supposed to look at user flows and make the journey as simplistic as possible. Remove as much cognitive load as possible. This is something
Remove
that
roadblock.
my
Yeah.
any roadblock, remove any, and most importantly, any cognitive dissonance or any cognitive load that's on the customer. Remove that. Then my friend Shravan, who I would like to call this out, he is a big proponent of this. He's one of the top guys in growth, and he cannot stress this point more often than not that the product ideally your user flow should be as simplistic as possible. It is the job of the product growth team is not to introduce fancy complicated features, it's just to simplify and run down things so that your conversions can be your maximum juice that you can extract can be extracted. So
Yeah,
I
and
think
I think
primarily that is the answer. Yeah.
no, that makes sense, right? And if, even to whoever asked this question, it's very. Let's take Rentomojo's example itself, right? So, what product or any of the, and this is something we were talking about, right, Raj? That product managers and products are multipliers of existing value. And that's what code
Absolutely.
is. It's infinitely scalable out there. That's what software did to the world. In the same sense,
Mhm.
let's take this is a very macro first principle statement. Let's take one very specific anecdotal example. If you are to pick up, say, someone wanting to rent a table or study table. Like recently, with
Mhm.
everyone going work from home, so I just got a notice that the question asked was this by from someone from Dunzo called Mamta. So
Okay.
yeah, all right. So here we are, and if you look at this way, that if someone's looking to rent a table, because with the whole COVID crisis, a lot of people are building up their own home offices. You could think
Mhm.
of it in a sense that if someone were to go buy a table outside, what would happen naturally is a shopkeeper would try to upsell you to say buying a chair also, or buying a
Right.
table lamp, or
Right.
if you are going to a very fancy store, probably a monitor, a mouse pad, and 50 other accessories. Now that
Mhm.
happens at the individual salesperson at that particular retail salesperson there. But with product,
Absolutely.
you can automate this. You can see that more often than not. People buy a table and a chair because they kind of need both. Or they get a
Absolutely.
chair and they get like a side table or something, right? Or they
Right.
get a chair and for other weird kinds of people, they can get like a whatever, a handball or something like that. And that intelligence helps us upsell every time and that increases the average order value, which increases growth or revenue, right? And this is something
Absolutely.
that's entirely infinitely scalable and possible with product, even in a supply heavy business where it's added as a multiplier. And I think
Absolutely.
that's what's beautiful about this, right? Like products literally applicable anywhere. And yeah,
Absolutely.
that's it. So Raj, thank you
Mhm.
for being here with us and thank you for taking the time out. So guys, thank you for joining us for this live session. It's been amazing having you over. I hope this was helpful. At the same time, if you still have any questions, please reach out to us on Facebook. We'll try and get them answered by Raj, either asynchronously over in the comments or as a short video snippet. And thank you for joining in. Stay safe and goodbye, people.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah.